All right, first up is an article of research out of NASA's JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And what they've created is MOXIE, which stands for Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. It's a mouthful. I like to just call it by its acronym, which is MOXIE.
Makes sense.
And MOXIE's whole purpose is that it's an instrument to extract oxygen from Mars's atmosphere. And if you don't know, Mars's atmosphere is about 96% carbon dioxide, which is much different from Earth's atmosphere in that it's got enough oxygen for us to walk around, breathe, talk, set things on fire. You can't do any of those things on Mars. So they're going to use Mars's atmosphere, try to break down the CO2, extract oxygen from it so that they can use oxygen for all the great things that we need oxygen for on Earth.
So is MOXIE's goal to produce oxygen for human beings once we colonize Mars?
It's a secondary goal of the project, but the main goal actually is to create oxygen for rocket fuel.
Okay.
And if you don't know, rocket fuel actually has to have oxygen in it to burn. And they bring in oxygen or oxidizers as the propellant in rocket fuel. And so rocket fuel is really heavy, and it's actually physically almost impossible to bring enough rocket fuel to Mars to have a rocket be able to return from Mars to Earth. So personally, if I was going to Mars, I wouldn't want to go unless we had a return plan. So I'm happy that NASA's focusing on this.
Right.
And so the way that they do it is they're planning to only basically bring enough rocket fuel with them to get to Mars, and then they will use MOXIE to create oxygen on Mars's atmosphere, and they can put that oxygen back in the rocket to give it enough fuel to shoot back to Earth.
Okay, so can MOXIE make enough oxygen to do that right now?
So MOXIE is being attached to NASA's Perseverance rover,
Okay.
which will be landing on Mars in a few years. Currently, in lab tests at least, it was only capable of producing about 6 to 10 grams of oxygen per hour, which for context is about how much oxygen a small dog needs to breathe every hour. And so in theory, they could have sent a small dog to Mars and it could just live breathing off of MOXIE's air, but that's not actually what they care about. What they care about is testing it during different atmospheric conditions on Mars. So they're going to conduct 10 different tests throughout the first Mars year, which is actually 2 Earth years. So the first 2 years that MOXIE's on Mars, it's going to conduct 10 different tests to try and see if it can produce enough oxygen. And the reason they do different tests is because there can be different atmospheric conditions at different altitudes. The air might be a different density, be a different temperature. Basically, like the seasonal and climate conditions that we see here on Earth, they aren't quite as exaggerated on Mars, but they want to make sure that those different conditions, that MOXIE still works. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah, it does. So they just want to make sure that they're getting the right, I guess, quality of oxygen out of the process, regardless of the season.
So they want to make sure they have the right purity and also the right quantity.
Gotcha.
And if it works, then I think they plan to send a MOXIE that's 200 times larger, and they figure that that will produce enough oxygen for them to be able to, save up oxygen on Mars in tanks and then send humans back from Mars to Earth. So the 200 times will only go if MOXIE's successful, but if it does, it's basically the key to the return flight from Mars to Earth.
Well, the approach makes a lot of sense to me. And honestly, I'm pretty excited to hear about how MOXIE does after the 2-year mission.